Welcome to the Switchwear Study Lab's thesis preparation video. In this video, we're going to talk about academic posters. Now, your posters are going to print it as A0, and A0 might seem like a large poster, so it's more than half of your height. You can see a couple of students here and their posters, and it really seems like a big poster. You have lots of space. However, as we saw before, the viewers are actually quite far away from the poster. So on those images we see there are some visitors, some other students playing the game, looking at the demos, and there's also the poster there and over here as well. So the poster should really be designed in a way that conveys information for people who are also further away. This is relevant to the 3 reads or the sub-eligibility principle that we discussed before. If you are not considering this, you might be thinking that you have this large A0 space, you could print your entire thesis on it. But please don't do that. You should really think about like how much actual text should you have on your poster compared to the visuals or compared to larger design elements regarding the text you put on the poster. So here are 2 examples. On the left we have a poster with 200 words, and on the right we have a poster with 800 words. You can already notice that the poster with 800 words feels quite intimidating. So if all of this text is really something you need to read through to understand this project, then it will take quite a long time to read through it and really understand it. So this is the thinking process that goes on in the reader's head. How much time do I need to spend on this poster to understand what were the results and what did the student make? Perhaps on the left there should be a little bit more words, but otherwise I would say that on the left poster the important information is covered. So the features, some introduction, and the conclusions. Now, it doesn't have to be like introduction and features and conclusions, absolutely not. You can have different sections, but one thing that is important is you should have some sort of a main like text that describes the main aspect or very briefly says what were the results and what is this project about. And then you can think about like maybe we should have some features and other things. And also the pictures are important here. Generally speaking, I would say that maximum of 300-400 words would be a good maximum number of words to put on the poster. So on the left it's 200 and on the right it's 800. Otherwise, if you put more than 300 or 400 words, the reader is gonna feel intimidated and thinking like your project is so complicated that really need to read through all of this text to understand it, so I'll rather not bother and I'll move on to the next poster. So try to convey your results or your process or your like interesting things about your project with less words than 300 or 400. Again, a picture says more than 1,000 words, so pictures are better than having long blocks of text. Now the layout itself, well, you can be creative with this. Here are 4 different examples, but these are all just examples. Like you can have a very different layout. But what we can see here is that, well, people have followed these 2-column layouts or these 3-column layouts. And sometimes there is this large block that covers all the columns. So I would say that these are quite traditional layouts. So we have some pictures, we have some text, they're columned. So again, people like this 1/3 approach. So generally, the layout should help the reader orient through the poster. So if someone just wants to look at the pictures, they can see, well, oh, the pictures are over here. I'm gonna look at those and I'm trying to see what the project is about just from the pictures. Or maybe here you have some sort of a results block, so they want to just know about the results, so they might look there. Or they might think that, okay, I want to know who made it, so they look at the footer, so who are the authors. Or the main title, of course, is up here, so they will look at the main title and obviously see what the main title of the project is. But generally speaking, those layouts should be able to show the readers what is where on your poster. Related to that is the sub-eligibility, or the 3 reads. So let's come back to this topic and let's analyze a specific poster in terms of the sub-eligibility. So here is a poster, and what we can see is it kind of uses 2 columns, but those columns are grouped in a way where I would say that this first column is like 1/3 of the poster and the second column is kind of 2/3. So it uses this thirds rule, but it has 2 columns. That's an interesting design element. So this already makes this poster quite unique and perhaps more appealing to read for the viewer who has seen through 10 identical posters that all have been boring. This one might seem unique and interesting for them. And we can also see that it's quite detailed. So there's quite a lot of details, lots of text on this poster, but also some design elements. So let's look at the different reads and let's see how this poster can be broken up into the 3 reads. Well, first we have the catch. So what are the design elements that are kind of catching the reader's attention from afar? Well, mainly, of course, the title of the project, so evolution of video games. And video games is quite large here, and we even have this controller silhouette. So people can see, oh, this project is about video games. So if the viewer is interested in video games, and well, it says video games here on the title, then they might come and see what this project is about. Then we have these characters, so we can see that, okay, there are these colorful characters, there's this big design element, so those characters are integral to this project. So if we're interested in characters and character design, then we might also be caught by that visual, so we want to see what those characters are about. And we have some screenshots, so there seems to be this kind of a virtual tour, some photos of some sort of a place and a character with a dialogue. So if you're interested in like virtual tours of real places and characters with a dialogue, then these screenshots might catch your interest. Now the second read is the headings of the different blocks: the online course, various topics, assignments, results, studying, game. The most important thing here is perhaps the online course. So this says that, okay, it's the evolution of video games online course. The project was about an online course. Now we can also see, okay, it features some sort of a studying game, there are assignments and some results. Secondly, we can see these texts that are in orange or in this like bold or this emphasis. So this text in this emphasis, we can see that it's a 3 credits online course. It's some sort of a master's thesis in the field of video games, 10 weeks, educational videos. So I would say that this emphasis is a bit overused on this poster. For example, master's thesis, that's not really relevant to the result. So the fact that it's a master's thesis can be in the third read. It doesn't have to be in the key information read. Also, different things like various assignments or these innovative changes, marketing, different things like to explore and gain points, read the material, watch the videos. I would think that these can be more concisely conveyed. Right now, it's a lot of emphasis on like perhaps too much information here. It can be a little bit more concise. But some of this information is really the key. So we can see that a total of 106 testers, students, they got some feedback from them and something is very positive. So that's important that we have 106 students who gave this feedback. Now, why is it important? If this number would be just 6 or 5, then we might be suspicious that are these results really reliable. But if it's 106 and they're doing a quantitative study, you can really trust those numbers because there's a large sample size. So this sample size, this N, that actually is key information. Then moving on, we have this graph. So this pie chart is visible, but the problem with this is that we see that, okay, there is this lighter section, there is this bit less light section, and there are these darker sections, and the two lightest sections are making up the majority of the chart. So the problem here is that the labels of those sectors are not in the second read. So right now the reader doesn't see obviously what those sectors represent. So they have to go into the third read to actually investigate what is this diagram depicting. And well, we have also this link. So if you want your readers to type this link into their phone, then this is a good way to show this link. You put it in the key info. You even have this small arrow here showing that, look, here's a link. We really want you to go to this link. So if this is really important for the reader of this poster, go to that link, then this is a good way to emphasize it. But otherwise, yeah, I would say that it's a little bit too much information. So some of this information is very important, but some of it is less important. So that could be perhaps in the third read. And perhaps there should be something in the various topics, or we have this heading or this section that we see that, okay, various topics. So what are these various topics? So that might be a place to think about, like how to design it in a way where these various topics are actually conveyed in as part of the key information. Now if we go on to the third read, the context, so this is for the people who are now really interested in the project itself. They were caught from the first read, they looked at the key info and they're still interested and they want to know more. So this is now the read that they will go to. And they will see that, okay, there is this online course, it's graded, various topics again, and these various topics, well, they can read all of those topics over here, and they can read more about like what is the virtual tour and how is it integrated and so on. And they can also read now the labels of this diagram. They can see that this lightest sector here is the excellent feedback, or the students rated the course excellent, and then the second lightest is very good and so on. So now they can finally understand the graph. Coming back to the key info read again, we see that there's this Level Up video game museum here and Marcipano. So Marcipano is a technology how this virtual tour or the studying game was implemented. So in the catch read, we saw those screenshots of some sort of a virtual tour. So this is what catches the viewer. They see an actual place, a physical place, a virtual tour. So they want to know more about this. But here, I would say that just saying that the virtual tour is based on the Level Up video game museum, that would be like a perfect key info. the info that it's made with Marzipano and it's a visual novel type game. So maybe the visual novel type game is important, but that they gain points, explore the Marzipano, the actual technology. I think this is more of a context. So this is perhaps too much information in the key info. So it's not that important that it's made with Marzipano, it could be made with anything, but what's important is like what virtual tour is it and perhaps how is it used in studying, but that can be relayed in a more concise way. And then in the final, like the context read, they can see that it's implemented with Marzipano and how is it actually integrated. So again, the key info read, we have this integration that is automatically synchronized with Moodle using LTI. So this perhaps seems again this technical detail that could be in the context. So we can see that, okay, technically this is done this way, but what it actually is would be in the key info. But regardless, I think it's a pretty good poster, and this is how you would do an analysis of the 3 reads or the sub-eligibility of your own poster as well. So when you're designing your poster or some other graphical design thing, then look at the 3 reads. See what are the elements where the viewer's eye goes to first. So the title should be one of them. Some sort of an interesting visual, some characters or screenshots, pictures, some design elements. So what does the reader from afar see? Do they see these characters, and if they're interested in the characters, do they come and investigate further? Then what is the key info? What is the key info that you very quickly want to relay? You want to relay it's an online course, it's a studying game, it's based on an actual museum, and the results were very good. We had 106 sample size, and it was very positive, or perhaps we can be more concise, like it was excellent to very good, or however we want to describe it. But this graph, these labels should also perhaps be in the key info. So if we are depicting a large graph, then people should be able to read this graph very quickly. And then those people that are now very, very interested, what is the context that you're providing for them? What are these additional details or these specifics that you're providing for the readers who are now really, really, really interested in your poster? When you're designing your poster, really think about like what are those 3 reads that you are designing. Now to design this layout, I recommend this prototyping technique called Crazy 8s. It's really fast and it gives you really good results. So I don't often recommend like these ideation techniques or prototyping techniques. I'm sort of skeptical about those. They seem a little bit like not very concrete, but this is a very concrete technique. And I used it and I was amazed on how well it worked. So first you take an A4 paper, just your regular sheet of copying paper A4. Now you fold it into 8 sections. So you fold it once, you fold it again, and then in the other direction as well. So you get those 8 rectangles. And now you set a timer. You set a timer for 1 minute. And in this 1 minute, you sketch your first idea of the layout onto the first rectangle. So you have 8 rectangles, you set a timer, and you start sketching the first rectangle. When the timer ends, you stop, put the pencil down. And you really do have to stop. So 1 minute is over, you stopped. And then you look at your design and you see what worked, what didn't, what did you miss. And basically you spend a little time analyzing this design. And you probably won't spend too much on it because while designing, you already see that okay, I'm running out of time. What else should be there? The logo, okay, the author should be somewhere. Maybe I want to have a screenshot up. The time is up. I didn't manage to put a screenshot onto the design. That's all good. So now you know you want to put a screenshot somewhere as well. Now you set the timer again for 1 minute and you start sketching the second rectangle. And now you already know I want to have screenshots somewhere. And you put those screenshots somewhere in the design, in the layout. And you continue this for 8 times. And maybe at some point you have some ideas that, okay, maybe I want to have this interesting chart here and these details. And then the timer runs out and then you think about, okay, actually those details, maybe they're a little bit too much. Maybe instead of those, I am more interested in the screenshots or some interesting bigger visuals or the heading or some other things. So you kind of iterate these things in your head as well as you're prototyping them on the paper. All it takes you is 8 minutes, well, probably 10 because you also need to fold the paper and start and stop the timer. But basically in 10 minutes you have 8 different designs and you have really iterated through them in a fast manner and you have analyzed all those aspects that what you want in your design in a really small amount of time. So it's quite efficient. In the end you have like a very good insight on how you want your design to be. And after this, you can look at the 8 designs, see what worked, what didn't, and pull the elements from there into your actual poster. Maybe one of those was so perfect that you actually take this as a basis of your poster layout. But maybe none of those were good enough, so you take some elements from these different ones. But you have thought it through for 8 minutes, and that's the main benefit of this prototyping approach. So I would really recommend you to try this out when you are layouting your poster or some other visual things that need layouting. Now let's analyze a little bit the colors of posters. So I have some examples here, and basically you want to have a nice color palette that's representative of your thesis. We talked about colors in a previous video, so coolors.co or using the color wheel. So basically pick some nice colors. But what colors will you need on the poster? I would recommend to pull from the same colors that you had for your visual abstract or your game or your logo or whatever. So be consistent with the colors. But basically, if you analyze the different posters, we can see that there is some sort of a darker color, or it could also be a lighter color if the background is dark. But in this particular case, the background is this almost white, this soothing, unsaturated color, so this very bright, soothing, mellow color. And then we have this darker green that forms a contrast with the background. If your text would be similarly light color on a light background, then it's gonna be unreadable because there's not enough contrast. So you want your text to have a contrast with the background. Furthermore, you might have a second color that contrasts with the main text's color. So previously we saw on the example with the evolution of video games poster that we had this orange color that was used for emphasis. You can use your third color also for emphasis if you want. In this case the emphasis uses bold, but regardless a third color might be useful. So here it's used for links. So there is this large link. So try it online, and this is a poster where the authors really want you to go to this address and try this tool online, try it out on your phone or computer. So they really want to emphasize that look, here is an interesting link, important link. It's made with this pink color, and this pink color, well, it's visually balanced because this pink color is also on the screenshots. So it's good that they have used the same color for the link, but it's also a different color from the rest of the text. So it's obvious that this is a link, this is this important key information here. But generally speaking, it uses these 3 colors. Well, the logos are also here with blue, and of course on the screenshots there are more colors, but on the poster we can mainly see those 3 colors. But you can have a lot more colors than 3. For example, what we have here is our regular text with black and our headings with this darker purple. So we have this one color for the text and one color for the headings or the titles. So you can see that title is purple and these headings are purple, but the text is black. And we can also see 3 different colors for backgrounds. So we have the poster background, so we have this little bit medium purple, and we have this lighter purple that kind of makes those boxes for the text. Now, there are different issues with this poster in general. I think there should be a little bit space between the text and the edge of this box, for example. But still, they are making these visual boxes where the text is in. And this is a pretty good design because you can encapsulate the text into boxes, and then the people will know where to look, where does the text begin and where does it end, and look, there is a box with text. If you read through it, then that's gonna be rewarding for you. So these boxes are actually pretty okay. And then they have used white for the borders around the images. So look, there are these cool images and we have framed them with white. So there is this more contrast around the images. So please look at the pictures. And there is this white background also for the main title. So the main title is made even more visible by making the background of the main title this pretty much pure white. So that there is this high contrast for the title and its background. And the links use the same color blue as the logos. So there are these logos, the University Institute logo and the IT Academy logo. At the time, the students had this IT Academy stipend or scholarship. And when they received this scholarship, they had to add this IT Academy logo to their works that they made during their studies. But this blue, it's not copyrighted. You cannot copyright the color. These logos, the blue that is on the logos, you can use the same blue for other things on your poster. For example, the links. So here there is this one link and it is with the same blue as the logos. So reusing the same colors as not to have a myriad of different colors that might or might not work well with each other. To avoid that, you can use the same colors that are also on the logos. However, you can also have a very simplistic poster. For example, here, I think this poster works quite well. We have black text and gray background, and that's it. There are also the logos, but the links here are not made with that blue. They are black, like a link over here. It's the same black, that's the rest of the text. And I think visually it's a pretty good poster. There is this visual box that the text is in. There is a clear separation between the text, so we can see the approach and play the game. There are big screenshots, always useful, so people look, okay, what is this poster about? Oh, it's some sort of a game with platforms and a shuriken, and you collect some coins, and there's a katana. So looks like a cool game. It's portrait view, so perhaps it's a mobile game. And they look at the heading, Shuriken Way, an Android puzzle game. Yep, it's a mobile game. And now they can perhaps read this text. So maybe the text is a little bit too verbose, but regardless, there is a good catch for that poster. There are of course other problems, like I would put a little more spacing between these two headings. So again, this text, the text over here, goes logically together with this heading, not with that heading. So that heading is about the text that follows it. So I would put spacing, more spacing over here, because if they're not logically supposed to be together, then they shouldn't be visually that together either. And the main title is a little bit near the top edge. So I would put more spacing on the top edge as well, so I have a uniform spacing all around the poster. Minimalistic design, so you don't have to have like tons of different colors or this 10 color palette. Just 2 colors can also work really well. Now, as mentioned, images communicate an idea visually. So you want to put images on your poster because they're more efficient to get the idea across than a paragraph of text that would take longer time to read. So here we have an image, and it's very obvious. Whatever this context is, we don't know the context. We don't know if it's whatever this is, but we can see that there are more masters than there are bachelors. Or Master of Science is a larger sector than a Bachelor of Science, and it's 96 compared to 71. And that's obviously visible from this graph. This idea is communicated very quickly through this pie chart, for example. And it's the same thing with, let's say, processes. So on the left we have this paragraph. First, the program does the step A. Then it checks the condition, and when we have case 1, it will continue to do step B. However, when we have case 2, then it will do C instead. So now it took me like 30 seconds or even more to read through this paragraph, and if I were to just have this diagram on the right, I can look at it and I can very obviously see A, case 1 B, A, case 2 C. So a flowchart can illustrate the process much more quickly than this paragraph of text. Similarly, screenshots. On the left we again have this paragraph of text. The program creates highway junctions at the intersection points of different highways. Because highways also have utility lines next to each other, the highway junction also needs to correctly handle the intersections of the utility lines. The closest utility pole to the intersected highway is determined, and the utility line from the intersecting highway is joined, and so on and so on. Now, all this idea can be conveyed with just this one screenshot. We can see those highways here. There's a highway junction, so 2 highways are intersecting, and there are utility lines, and we can see that the utility lines are also branching out. It's much more easier to look at this picture and see roads, utility lines, trees, all sorts of different things in this application, and we can see the utility lines. Furthermore, you can use this picture to illustrate the idea yourself. You can say all those words that are on the left yourself verbally when you're showing this project to someone from the poster. But even if you are not there, people will more easily look at this picture than to take that time and read through this text and then try to imagine this picture in their head themselves. Now, you might have some very cool diagrams in your thesis, for example the one on the left. However, for your poster or the fence slides that are being shown on like larger screens, you need to rework those diagrams. Make sure that the labels are larger, the numbers, everything, that it would be readable from afar. This is a similar issue we saw with the evolution of video games poster, where the actual labels of the diagram were on the third read. But if you're showing this diagram, it's a very cool, colorful image. People are interested to look at it, but then they should be able to understand it immediately as well. So have the labels larger on the diagram so that they would be in the second read. Also, if you're using like rasterized graphics, then make sure that the graphics resolution is sufficient. Even if you're working with vector graphics in Affinity or have exported vector graphics from GeoGebra or Plotly, then at some point you are rasterizing them. Maybe you're rasterizing them in Affinity and then you're putting them on your defense slides, or you're making your poster in Affinity and you're rasterizing them there. In either way, make sure that the resolution in which you're rasterizing is sufficient. So here is an example from an actual thesis. We saw this example before as well, but this is rasterized with a very low resolution. And on the left you can see an example of like if you have vector graphics, like these are originally vector graphics, but if you're rasterizing them with like a very low resolution, then they become blurry and you cannot really make out the details anymore, and this just doesn't look very good. So when you're putting things on your poster, defense slides, even on your visual summary, if you have things you rasterize, make sure they're rasterized with a high enough resolution. Now what is that resolution? So your poster is A0. A0 is about 33 times 47 inches. So this is quite large. It's more than a meter tall. So this is why I said in the beginning that it's probably larger than half your height. So it's quite tall, large poster. Now if you're printing it, it's printed with 300 pixels per inch. So every inch is 300 pixels. Unfortunately, it is measured in inches, so we have to work out like what is the millimeters to inches and so on, so we have to work with inches here, but still the printing standard is 300 pixels per inch. Now, what if we want to put a large image on the A0 poster? So we have an image, it's not gonna be from one edge of the paper to another, so there's gonna be a margin, but let's say it's 30 inches wide and 20 inches tall. So the question is, what resolution should that image have? And you can easily calculate this. It's 9000 by 6000 pixels. So if you want that image to be sharp and not blurry or like this blurry upscaled ugly version of the image, then you need to render this image with 9000 by 6000 pixels. And that is a large resolution. If this is a screenshot of your game, then you might need like a specific script that is gonna render out a frame, your screenshot with that resolution to be able to print on the poster. Of course, it doesn't have to cover like the entire width of the poster. You can render out half of this. Then it would just be 4500 times 3000 pixels. Still quite large though. So you might need to look up different scripts or ways to render these large resolution screenshots of your game, of your project. However, if it's like a vector graphics diagram, then in Affinity you need to export your PNG and make sure that the resolution is high enough to actually be on an A0 poster. Something quite important to keep in mind when you're rasterizing images. Now another thing I recommend you to have in your poster is a margin. So something like 25 millimeters margin on all the different sides. It can be larger as well, doesn't have to be 25, could be 40 millimeters. Larger the margin, like if it's too large then of course it's a waste of space, but there is this nice sweet margin that is all around the poster itself. Because the problem is that, well, if it's, first of all there's a visual problem, like if your design is really on the edge of the paper, like maybe on the left here, so the paper starts and already comes your text, then it's quite like, it feels tight. It feels like very cramped together and it kind of makes people anxious. So it's kind of pressing against the text. So that's not like a good design. Again, using this space, this white space and this layouting your design elements, your texts in a way that there is a space between the different objects, breathing room if you will, then that's good design. Secondly, the issue is that if it's very on the corner, then they could print it with a little bit offset and then some of your design gets cut out. So this doesn't usually happen. So usually if they're cutting into your design, then that's a problem with the printing process. But sometimes it does happen that you have designed it like with very high like millimeter accuracy. So it's your text is on that millimeter, and if they cut like 2 millimeters this way, then it cuts into your text. Well, then you should have this bleed or this margin around your design so that if they cut a little bit to the left or right, then that's still fine. And there's actually a third issue. So if this is a poster, then these posters are put on those poster walls, right? And they're put there with clamps, and there needs to be space for the clamp. So I've seen issues with posters where the institute's logo is so on the edge of the paper that we have to put a clamp on it to hold the poster up. So again, bad design. Don't put things on the very edge of your paper. On the right, we can see an example. So there is this neat border around the design. So if this border is like cut a couple of millimeters one way or other way, doesn't really matter. There is a space for clamps to hold the poster up, and it has this breathing room. So it doesn't feel cramped. It feels like there is sufficient space from all the different sides, and we can very easily look at this poster without feeling this tough tension that we do with the first example over here. But generally speaking, you should find your design. So here are 4 examples of different designs. We can see a design where, there is this large image with sufficient resolution, of course. And there is this big logo, so very eye-catching poster. You go there, you'll see ball, just how much does it take to entertain. And these large looming eyes up here, that's something that catches people's eye, and this large elephant. Or we can have these big pictures of the moon. So it's very obvious. This poster is about the moon. So if we are interested in the moon, we can see there is this a real moon and the simulated moon surface. So let's go learn about the moon, and then we go and read what actually happened here. Or reflections, so interactive digital art. Already we see this a subtitle or caption, interactive digital art. So what is reflections? We don't know, but it's reflections. Now we know it's interactive digital art. And then we can see, there are these examples. There is this bee with a flower and all sorts of different cool visuals. And now we can go and, if we're interested, read more about it. Or Delta VR user flow improvements. So this heading, this caption, this is very visible. If we're interested in user flow improvements of the Delta VR project, then this catches our eye. We can see a car, we can see a photo of a car and a virtual car. We can see the inside of this virtual Delta building. There's also this photo of actual testing session being conducted. If you're curious about those, we can go more into the details and see that there's a map, and there is this bit of a flow chart, and things have been discovered and solved, and there is this other chart here, and we can really dig into the details. Now, one thing you can do to check your poster design before actually printing it out is to show it on a projector. So go to the lab and pull your project poster up on the Torrance computer and show it on a projector. You can roughly measure an A0 size on it, and then you can see how does this poster actually look like when viewed from afar, and are your elements, your texts, are they too small or too large, or how does it feel? So this is a very useful technique to actually test your design before printing it out, because printing it out, it's quite tens of euros for an A0 poster. It's not that cheap, and if you make a mistake or the design doesn't work and you want a new one, then it's gonna cost more money. So make sure that your design actually works by first showing it with a projector. That doesn't cost anything. You can just go to the lab and see it on the screen. Now technically, when you're exporting your poster from Affinity Studio, then you want to export a PDF. So the poster needs to be exported into a PDF format. So you click File, Export, Export again, and PDF. And this is the pop-up that will open up, and you can configure all sorts of different things for your PDF. Well, first, of course, choose the PDF to export. You can also export it to PNG and SVG and JPEG and different formats, but no. You want the PDF. So choose PDF. And secondly, there is this PDF for print. Now I'm going to explain what this does, but usually that should work. So PDF for print should be the correct choice here. Next, you can choose your DPI. So as I mentioned, your DPI, your dots per inch, will be 300. So please choose 300 from here. Next, there is this weird setting, downsample images. So I don't know what this actually does. This setting was very low when I first encountered it. You can probably turn it off, or you can say that, above 300 dpi, then you downsample, because you shouldn't downsample your images into less than 300 dpi, because then they're still gonna be very poor in the actual print or in the PDF even. So maybe you can turn this setting off as well, but if you don't, then this should probably be at 300. But down here we have resample algorithm, so the filtering algorithm. So this most likely you want to be linear. Unless you have pixel art poster and you want to preserve your pixel art nearest neighbor sharp edges, then it should be a nearest neighbor. But in most cases it should be bilinear, or even better, there are bcubic and different other resampling algorithms in this selection box as well. But then you have this JPEG compression. Now, if you allow it, you can disable it as well if you want, but if you allow it, make sure that the quality is 95 or above. because by default it's 85, and 85 does show like visual squigglies, so this JPEG compression artifacts. So 85 I would say is way too low. So something above 95 is where it's pretty much virtually indistinguishable from no compression. But if you allow it, like your file size will be a bit smaller, so maybe you do want to allow it, but if you do, make sure that the quality is sufficiently high. Now there is this other option as well for the PDF. It's this flatten option. So this will rasterize everything. When you do the PDF for print, it will keep all the graphics that it can as vector graphics. So the printer itself will have to like rasterize them depending on the printing DPI. But sometimes I've had issues with this when I had lots of layers or different elements like layering on top of each other and having different like blending modes that are configured to have this very specific blending of the layers. Then I've had issues where there are some sort of like a layer artifacts on the print. So to be extra safe, if you used a bunch of layers, then this flatten will rasterize everything. So in the end you will get like a raster PDF. The downside of it, of course, is that if someone opens this PDF on a computer, they cannot select the text because the text is rasterized. So if you have a link on your poster as text and you are expecting people to download the PDF of your poster and then click on the link, well, that isn't an option if you have flattened your PDF here. But for printing, it can be like a safe option. So you flatten it, you look at the rasterized flattened PDF, and that will be exactly how it will be printed. Of course, here you definitely want to have this DPI 300 and that it's rasterized in this large resolution so that the dimensions and everything are actually matching the A0 and the print DPI. But yes, I've had cases where this flattening is the better option, and I've even had this case where a student sent a PDF that wasn't flattened to print and their title was missing. So I don't know what they did with the main title. So they had this large title with white font on black background, and when they sent it to print, for some reason the title just disappeared. So there can be issues like if you have used many layers and different configurations between the layers and then you're sending it to print without rasterizing them, then things can happen and things can disappear. So the extra safe option is to just flatten everything, rasterize everything, and then exactly what you see in the PDF, it's a raster, that will be printed. And definitely use a PDF. So you definitely want to export the PDF. I've seen people export like a PNG file or send like a PowerPoint file for some reason, and that's problematic. So what are these other file formats? Well, JPEG. JPEG is for photographs. It's meant to represent like a photograph where there aren't like too many like sharp edges that need to be preserved. So there's usually some not very high frequencies that are important in a photograph. What JPEG does, it actually cuts off the high frequencies. And this is how it saves the disk space, basically. This is JPEG compression. But if you save your poster in JPEG, you're either going to have like a large file size if you disable the compression or put the compression to like 0. Or if you have compression, then you get a smaller file size not like hundreds of megabytes. But in that case, if you have like nice sharp diagrams with sharp edges and text, like font and text edges like of letters, then these will get quite blurry. So don't use JPEG. PNG preserves the sharp edges, but it has a huge file size if you save your A0 as a PNG. There are some exceptions, but in most cases your PNG is usually for like graphics, like your one plot can be a PNG, but not your whole poster. So PNG isn't that good either. And also those specialized file formats. So the Affinity file format, the Adobe Illustrator, or your PowerPoint file format, these are all like working files. These are not the files you share for people to view. So a PDF is something you share with others for others to view. Your Affinity file is something you work with. It's like if you have a game, then your Unity project is not what you're sharing with your players. You're sharing the build with your players. The Unity project is where you work in. So same thing here. So the Affinity file, the Illustrator file, the PowerPoint file, these are all where you work. From those software, you export a PDF. Because other people might not have that software. If I send you an Adobe Illustrator file and you're not paying Adobe this monthly fee and have Adobe Illustrator, you can't open it. So it's pretty much useless to you. So a PDF is what you export and share. So the takeaway from this video is limit your text to 300 and 400 words maximum. So too much text is very intimidating for the viewer. So 300-400 words maximum. People can still invest their time into it. Then work on the layout of your poster, the colors, ensure the subway legibility, and check your design. Put your poster up with the projector and see how it looks like in actual size. And lastly, use high resolution images. Make sure that your resolution of the images is sufficient for 300 dpi printing, and configure the export settings in a way that will make you a correct PDF of your poster.